friends, to the show that never ends. I'm Brandon Ware. You're watching Angel 65, my channel for all things music related, both my own songs and music reviews. This is Chapter 5 of the Beatles' Deep Dive. We have begun Phase 2 of this deep dive, where I am looking through all of their films and promos released during their career, and then some of the archival compilations that were released after their career, particularly in the mid-1990s. So Chapter 5 is going to focus on promo films, as well as 4 of the 5 feature films released during their career and the Get Back documentary, which essentially serves an updated and more accurate version, but the same function as the Let It Be documentary. So the first of 6 releases we'll discuss is this. This is the Beatles 1 Plus. This is a 2 Blu-ray and CD set, which was released in 2015. Blu-ray 1 contains promos and videos for all of the 27 tracks that are included on the original 2001 compilation. The second Blu-ray features alternate versions of some of the same songs, as well as additional songs that were either album cuts or B-sides or double A-sides that did not make it to number 1 that still got videos made for them, either during or after their career. Then the CD contains all of the same tracks as the original 1 compilation, but newly remixed by Giles Martin. The packaging is phenomenal. The packaging features a slipcase. Inside that slipcase is a book-style DVD size box. This is probably my favorite style of DVD box, where the book is bound into the DVD case. In the front of the book, we have the 2 Blu-rays. In the back, we have the CD. And in the middle, we have a very colorful 120-page book, which opens with an essay by Mark Ellen, an appreciation sharing some of the historical context of these promos. Many of these promos were made so that the Beatles could send them to TV programs to air after their popularity became so massive that they couldn't appear everywhere they were being asked to appear. After they stopped touring, this became their main way to promote their hit singles. Following that essay, each of the tracks gets its own 2-page spread with a still from the video. It contains some very detailed information about the single itself, its highest chart placement, the day it was recorded, engineering, etc. Basically an expanded version of the liner notes that were included on the original 1 CD, as well as information about the promo film that accompanies it. All of the sound is remixed in 5.1. However, it must be noted that some of these promos are using a mono soundtrack because they are not performed to the actual studio version. Not all of these are mimed. Some of these are genuine live performances, and in other cases, such as Hey Jude, they are performing to a backing track, but Paul is singing live on top of that backing track, so the original recordings are in mono. In the 5.1 mix, that is basically just most of the sound coming from the front 2 speakers with some added ambience out the back, so not true 5.1. But generally speaking, both the stereo and 5.1 remixes are absolutely outstanding. This was probably the first of the Beatles reissues that I started buying, getting into these remixes, and I must say Giles Martin did a fantastic job of remixing these. Some of these songs sound better than they ever have before. I have to imagine that in many cases, the 4-track tapes that were bounced down, they were able to go back to the original tapes and synchronize them so that they had actually more than 4 tracks and could space stuff out. I certainly think that must be true on earlier songs like Help, where we actually hear the double-tracked guitar parts panned left and right, which I don't think would have been possible if just using the bounced 4-track tape. And then later on, as the recordings get better and more detailed, things like Strawberry Fields Forever, Penny Lane, these just sound phenomenal. So the overall sound quality of the CD and the Blu-ray is absolutely outstanding. Really enjoyable. If I was going to be super picky, I could say that the bass frequencies were a little bit much. They do overdo the bass just a little bit, but that's something that you can adjust on your own system. But in general, I think the sound is very crisp and clear and just brings a whole lot of new character to these performances. Ticket to Ride, I thought, particularly sounded amazing. The guitars are very chimey and just beautiful to listen to. We'll discuss the 27 promos. Most of these were released or recorded during the Beatles' career, with just a few exceptions here and there. So starting with the first Blu-ray, Love Me Do was recorded on a BBC program called Merseysound. The performance was incomplete, so it is spliced in with some additional footage, and it's just a video of them performing live along with the original single version of Love Me Do, where Ringo was drumming. From Me to You is from the Royal Variety performance, one of their most famous early performances. She Loves You is from a program called Drop In, so a live performance. I Want to Hold Your Hand is a promo film shot on the Granada TV Center for a program called Late Scene and Extra. That is an official promo released at the time. Can't Buy Me Love is from a program called Around the Beatles. A Hard Day's Night is from a French performance called Les Beatles. I Feel Fine is one of many clips in this set, which all come from a session filmed on a single day, 23rd November 1965 at Twickenham Film Studios, where they recorded videos for their most recent singles. So they recorded several videos in one day. We have I Feel Fine. 8 Days a Week is a video montage of their performance on August 15th, 65 at Shea Stadium. Though they did not play that song, it is just a montage with 8 Days a Week as the background. Ticket to Ride is from that session at Twickenham. Help is from the session at Twickenham. Yesterday is a live performance on the Ed Sullivan Show. Paul is playing his acoustic guitar, and he's accompanied by a backing track as well as a string quartet of 2 violins, a viola, and a cello. Day Tripper is from the Twickenham session. We Can Work It Out is from the Twickenham session. Paperback Writer is filmed in Chiswick Park. This is their first video directed by Michael Lindsay Hogg. Yellow Submarine and Eleanor Rigby are both taken from the Yellow Submarine film. Yellow Submarine initially appeared over the credits, so the video here is just a montage of different scenes from the movie. The Eleanor Rigby scene, though, is cut directly from the film as it appears. Penny Lane is a legendary promo clip shot in Knoll Park, where the Beatles are riding on horses. Wonderful clip. All You Need Is Love is taken from the BBC broadcast of the worldwide performance, the first satellite link-up of 5 continents. It was colorized for the anthology documentary, so that's the version included here. Hello Goodbye is the first of 3 versions of the promo shot at the Savile Theatre. Lady Madonna was filmed in early '68, right before the Beatles left for India. This promo just features montages of them playing, although the song that they were actually recording on the day they were being filmed was Hey Bulldog, included later in this set. Hey Jude was filmed at the Robert Frost show. They are performing it to a backing track, but Paul is singing live, and at the end, the chorus, they are surrounded by a big group of people all singing the chorus together. Get Back is from the roof of Apple Studios at Savile Row. The Ballad of John and Yoko is a promo from the time, featuring some shots from their honeymoon. Something is the official promo released in '69 of the Beatles and their wives. Beautiful clip. Come Together is a promo created in 2000 to promote the original One compilation. It is an animated video using flash graphics, as it was of enough low resolution that it could be streamed on computers of that time. Interesting animation. Then Let It Be and The Long and Winding Road both come from the Apple Studio sessions featured in the Let It Be documentary, although it must be stated that on the Blu-ray, The Long and Winding Road is the Let It Be Naked version. It does not have the Phil Spector overdubs. On the second Blu-ray, we get Twist and Shout, again filmed at the Granada TV Center. We get Baby It's You, which has some footage of the Beatles outside the BBC studios, used to promote the Live at the BBC compilation in the 90s. Words of Love is part animated, part live action promo created to promote BBC On Air, Volume 2. Please Please Me is from the Ed Sullivan Show. Then we get an alternate version of I Feel Fine. The tape was apparently called I Feel Fried because it's just a film of the Beatles eating fish and chips while the song plays. Very bizarre video, filmed on that same day at Twickenham Film Studios, November 23rd. We get an alternate version of Day Tripper from that same day, as well as another video of Day Tripper that was performed live at the Granada TV Center for a program called The Music of Lennon and McCartney. We get an alternate We Can Work It Out from the Twickenham film session. We get an alternate Paperback Writer directed by Michael Lindsay Hogg of the band performing the song in Abbey Road Studios, not in Chiswick Park. Then we get 2 versions of Rain, so Rain from Chiswick Park as well as in Abbey Road Studios. We get the legendary, wonderful Strawberry Fields Forever promo directed by Peter Goldman. We get Within You, Without You, Tomorrow Never Knows, which is a bizarre kind of digitally compiled video created to promote the Love soundtrack album in 2006. And then we get the incredible Day in the Life promo. We get 2 alternate promos from the Saville Theater of Hello Goodbye. We get Hey Bulldog, so a reconstructed version of the film that was Lady Madonna, but this actually synchronized with them performing Hey Bulldog, which is the track they were actually recording. An alternate take of Hey Jude from the David Frost Show. We get the live promo of Revolution. The band is singing live, but they are still performing to a backing track. We Get Back, an alternate version filmed inside Apple Studios, not on the roof. We get Don't Let Me Down, filmed on the roof. And then we get the 2 promos from the 90s to promote Anthology 1 and 2. We get Free as a Bird and Real Love. Then the CD, as I said before, contains remixed versions of the original 1 soundtrack. Overall, this is just an amazing compilation. You get some bonus features on the Blu-ray, which are introductions from Paul and Ringo for a few of the songs on disc 1, and then Strawberry Fields Forever on disc 2. It's great to hear from them. They don't necessarily provide any insight that you don't get from reading the book, but it's great to hear from the 2 of them, and overall it is just a wonderful package. It gets a stunning, flawless 5 out of 5. I would consider it an essential must-have if you were a fan of the Beatles. This is absolutely a must-have. I believe it is one of the coolest releases I've bought by them, and for the price that I paid for it, which was about $50, I didn't think that was too extortionate. Hopefully you can still find it for around that price, and if you can, or for even less, then it's absolutely worth having. Wonderful compilation that contains most of the promos created during their career, as well as a few that were created after. Moving on to the feature films. We have this Miramax Collector's Edition DVD of A Hard Day's Night. I know the film has been released on Blu-ray. There's a Criterion Collection Blu-ray, which I might pick up, but I've hung on to this because this was the first way that I saw the film, and it has some interesting bonus features. My thoughts on A Hard Day's Night. It is a wonderful, witty, super comedic film that I really get a kick out of. I find it very, very charming, and I enjoy watching it every time I put it on. I've only seen it in its entirety maybe 3 to 4 times, and watching it again for the first time in several years, I was reminded just how ubiquitous the Beatles were, how important they were, and why 1964 was the year of the Beatles. The film is really just a testament to their popularity and is a fictionalized documentary of what it might have been like to be on the road with them. Of course, it's surreal in many places, but it's still very comical, and the script is incredibly well written, based on other interviews that you've seen of the Beatles being their authentic selves. The dialogue really does feel authentic to them. It feels like things that they would have and could have said, and it's just a charming film that I really, really enjoy. The film itself is a 5 out of 5. It's a wonderful film, a testament to their first year, and it truly was something quite different from other rock and roll films of the time. Richard Lester did a phenomenal job of creating something that was actually quite radical for its time, but is still very watchable. One thing to be said is that for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, all of the songs except the title track are featured in a lower key, played slower than they are on the A Hard Day's Night album. I'm not sure why there was issues with synchronization, and apparently this is something that could not be rectified on the more recent Blu-ray reissues either. So they are slightly slower. I'm not sure why that happened, but it's not too distracting that it takes away from the movie viewing experience. Overall, it's a really fun film to watch. As for the bonus features, well, there's no words from the Beatles themselves at all anywhere, but you do get a nice documentary which features a lot of the filmmakers, as well as pretty extensive commentary from Walter Shenson, the producer, and Richard Lester, the director. So as someone who is a fan of film, I really appreciated those extras. On the second disc, you get extras with a lot of the extra cast members, people in the production team. There's an interview with George Martin discussing his opinions of some of the songs that were featured in the film. All in all, that stuff is very interesting to me. The one downside is just that you don't get to hear from the Beatles themselves at all. There's not any dialogue from them. There's no interviews spliced in. This is all bonus material, just containing interviews with other people involved in the film. So if you're looking to hear the Beatles' perspective and their behind-the-scenes dialogue and stuff, you don't get any of that here. There's no deleted scenes. It's just a lot of discussion with other people that were involved. For me, that's very interesting. Something else interesting is that disc 1 has DVD-ROM features using the interactual player, which is something that I used as a kid on a few other DVDs that I had had that. I felt inclined to try it. I assumed it wouldn't work on my Windows 10 PC and that those features would have long since been deactivated. Interactual would not install on Windows 10, but much to my surprise, it did. I could not watch the film and read the script at the same time. That feature did not work on my PC for whatever reason. But there is a website archive of the A Hard Day's Night website as it appeared in the year 2002, I believe, when this was released. That was fascinating to go through. It did load that full archive, and I walked through that. There was no particular insight to how the film was made or the lives of the Beatles or anything like that, but it was just a nostalgic trip for me because I remember when websites used to look like that. So it was fascinating to just click through that and see what that website would have looked like as it appeared in the early 2000s. Overall, the package itself I think is really nice. I would like to pick this up on Blu-ray, but even if I do, I might hang on to this because I've learned that the Criterion Collection Blu-ray does not contain the extra interviews that are on disc 2. Certainly not all of them are particularly interesting, and there's a few that go on way too long where I think some of the co-stars kind of make themselves sound perhaps more important than they actually were to the production. But overall, it's nice to hear from people that were involved in the film, and particularly people that were closely associated with the Beatles, like Derek Taylor and Klaus Voormann. Very interesting stuff on here. So the package itself, it's in standard definition, but overall I was pleased with it. It was fun to watch, and it was fun to go through that website archive. So I'll give this a 5 out of 5. I can't see any reason to drop a star. I've seen comments that said the transfer on here is not particularly good compared to other transfers of the film, and if I ever get a Blu-ray that has higher quality, I will report back if I find that it doesn't look very good. But as far as DVD is concerned, it looked pretty okay to me. Staying in the realm of DVD as well as proper scripted feature films, we have the Help 2007 Deluxe Edition box set. Now, this film was available on Blu-ray long before I bought this, but I saw this when it was first announced as I was a younger kid, and I wanted it for years and years and years. So when I finally had disposable income of my own and didn't have to beg my parents to buy me things that they really should not have been buying me anyway, I picked it up on eBay. This was a sealed copy. I believe I paid maybe $30 for this, which, given what's in it, is, I think, a phenomenal price, and it seems like you can still get it for around that price. So this is not too collectible, or it's just there's enough of them out there to make it so that you don't have to pay a fortune for this. Inside the box, you get a 2-piece slipcase. All of the goods are wrapped in this Help paper, which I kept because I think it looks cool, even though it is kind of a pain to rewrap it. Inside there you have the original script. Richard Lester's original script. It has all of his handwritten notes, scenes that were cut out and deleted, as well as some sketches and additional lines penciled in. I did read through the whole script, and what's fascinating about it is that it doesn't read like a real film script where there's lots of stage directions, lots of description of exactly what the camera is focusing on, what it intends to capture. It really reads like a book where it's just a story. There's directions saying what the Beatles are doing and where they're at, but other than that, it's really just a dialogue-driven script. So it was a very fast read. It only took me about the time it takes to watch the film to read through the script. And it's also fascinating how close the script is to the final film. There's a few lines that were altered, but for the most part, the script that's included here is pretty accurate to all the dialogue and all the action that appears in the film. So as someone who, again, just appreciates film, I thought that was fascinating to see all of his handwritten notes and to just have it in paper form the way it would have been published, or the way he would have been looking at it back in 1965 when the film was made. In addition to that, you get a nice, gorgeous blue book. Inside that book is mostly just photos. There's an intro by Richard Lester. There is an appreciation by Martin Scorsese, which is pretty fascinating. And the rest of the book is all just pictures from the film. Very nice pictures, as well as some pages that contain call sheets, things like that, some memorabilia from the actual film procedure. The book contains the 2 DVDs. At the back, it contains some postcards and a poster, a really nice theatrical poster, which I would consider hanging if it weren't folded. Very nice theatrical poster. And the lobby cards are really cool too. The DVDs itself are not too terribly expansive. Disc 1 just contains the film. That's it. There's some hidden radio promos, but no special features on Disc 1, no commentary track or anything like that. And Disc 2 has about 55 minutes of extra features, so a half-hour documentary on the making of the film, which again features Richard Lester quite heavily, and I am fascinated to hear what he has to say, given that this film in particular was very radically different from A Hard Day's Night, as well as interviews with Eleanor Braun, who played Ame in the film. You get a documentary about the restoration of Help, which, again, as someone who appreciates film and film restoration, I thought that was fascinating to see how they used their technology to try and preserve the film and clean it up and make it look as good as it possibly could. I don't know if that's the same transfer that would have been used on a later Blu-ray release, but it looks pretty good to me on the DVD. I had no complaints with the picture quality in any places. Then you get some deleted scene stuff and just some people talking about the film, theatrical trailers, and a couple more radio spots. So in terms of visual material, there's not much here. All in all, it's 2.5 hours. They probably could have fit it all on a single disc. Quite honestly, they didn't even need to split it into 2 discs. But the package itself is just beautiful, and I really was interested in having that hand annotated script and comparing it to the feature film. As someone who just appreciates the art of filmmaking deeply, that was very, very fascinating to me, and I enjoyed watching the movie and watching the extra features, as well as reading the script and looking through the picture book. All in all, wonderful package, 5 out of 5. I really, really think this is just a beautiful, beautiful package. I would highly recommend picking it up. Even if you have it on Blu-ray, it's just nice for the packaging. In fact, I may pick up the Blu-ray and just stick it inside this box, inside the book, in place of the DVD, but I don't have any intention of getting rid of this just because it's such a beautiful package. The film itself, I like it a lot less than A Hard Day's Night. I find it a little, I find that the fact that it's in color actually dates it more than A Hard Day's Night. That said, it is still witty, it's funny. Of course, the Beatles are being subjected to an outside plot in this movie, so John is famously quoted as saying that they were extras in their own movie, which in a way is very true. The Ringo is featured pretty heavily as the plot revolves around him, and there's still plenty of material and gags from the Beatles themselves, but they are not driving the plot in any way. It's all stuff happening to them, and they just happen to be the characters in the film that play songs from time to time. It is quite an art, almost pop art film, and it's clear from some of the close-ups that the Beatles were higher than kites and we're having a heck of a time doing the scenes. So I do get a kick out of it for that, and it is fun to watch. It was an enjoyable watch. It is very entertaining. In many ways, it's more entertaining than A Hard Day's Night. It's almost a better film because there is more of a plot to it, and the Beatles just happen to be characters in that plot. It's less of like a Beatles document than A Hard Day's Night. A Hard Day's Night gives a better indication of what Beatles fandom was like in the 60s. And so for that, I think it's more historically relevant today, but I still enjoyed Help quite a bit. Things take a radically different turn when the Beatles decide to make their own TV film, Magical Mystery Tour, shown on Boxing Day 1967. This box set was released in 2012. It contains a book with a history of the tour, the people that they brought with them, and just some wonderful photos, as well as an essay about the making of this film, which was created shortly after their manager Brian Epstein died. There's a little ticket stub in there. There is a Blu-ray and a DVD, and the Blu-ray contains some very interesting extra features, including some Easter eggs on the disc of scenes that were filmed on the bus that got deleted, including the Jesse Robbins, who plays Ringo's aunt, singing a blues song and doing some scat vocal, which was very entertaining. There's also a scene of them stopping at a fish and chips restaurant, the whole bus team. There's an alternate promo of Hello Goodbye, which is incredibly bizarre, created by the BBC. It features some footage of the Beatles editing the movie with Roy Benson, who was actually one of the assistant editors on A Hard Day's Night. But most of the video is just these weird, like, teenagers in bizarre clothes. Very 60s, very strange, but it's included because it has footage of the Beatles. You get a scene cut out of the film, Nat's Dream. You get I'm Going in a Field by Ivor Cutler. Bizarre character he is, that's for sure, and an even more bizarre song. I don't even know what to say about it. It was very strange. Nice documentary. You get a video by Traffic. Here we go round the mulberry bush, which I guess was commissioned for the film and ultimately not used. So, not the biggest fan of Traffic, or I should say I just don't know their catalog that well. They're not a band that I've super deep dived into, but to see a very, very young Steve Winwood and then performing that song was fascinating. You get an alternate version of Blue Jay Way, The Fool on the Hill, and Your Mother Should Know, so just alternate cuts to what appeared in the film. And the most interesting thing, the thing that excited me the most, is that you get a commentary over the whole movie from Paul McCartney, where he talks about filming it and the procedure behind it, as well as some of the things that they decided to do. Because, in case you've never seen Magical Mystery Tour, it is one of the most bizarre, psychedelic films I've ever seen. The book insists it's not an avant-garde film, and I suppose compared to things that, like, the French avant-garde filmmakers were doing around that time, which the Beatles were inspired by, it's not that out there, but it's pretty out there. I mean, having a strip scene in a film that was shown on television was pretty appalling. The band playing in the background during the striptease scene is the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band. Fascinating to see them, particularly Neil Innes. I was not a huge fan of the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band. I don't know their stuff too well, but I do like Neil Innes a lot, particularly for his contributions to Monty Python. It's clear that Help and Magical Mystery Tour both inspired a lot of Monty Python, as well as something we'll talk about in just a moment. Very strange film, very entertaining, but just very weird. The plot is pretty thin. It's just them going around the country and different things happen, and they're on a bus, and that's about it. Most of the entertainment comes from the songs. Particularly the clip that justifies the whole movie to me is I Am the Walrus, because that is the masterpiece of the period. That is one of John's best contributions to the Beatles. It's one of their best recordings, and the video of them at the airfield in Westmaling is just phenomenal. Absolutely need to see that. I'm surprised that they didn't edit that out and include it on the OnePlus set, actually, but it's here. It's great to see that, because I Am the Walrus is truly a magical, amazing recording. The Fool on the Hill is also really good, and the clip of Blue Jay Way is pretty interesting too, with George sitting in front of the bus playing a keyboard made of chalk. Fun stuff. Interesting film. Do I like it as much as Help or A Hard Day's Night? No, I don't. It's not one I go back to super frequently. Every time I do, I enjoy it, but it for me, it's just a little bit too much. The film itself, I would give a 3 out of 5, but the package, I would give a 5 out of 5, because not only do you get the Blu-ray, DVD, and a nice book, you get a replica of the original EP containing the 6 songs from the film as it was released in England. So 2 7-inch EPs with the booklet in the middle that was later expanded by Capitol in America to a full album, and then England eventually ended up releasing the album, and that became the core catalog version. But this contains the double 7-inch EP as it was originally released in 1967. The audio is from the Mono 2009 remaster, but it was just great to listen to that on vinyl, and this is in fact my sole vinyl representation of Magical Mystery Tour. I don't have the LP, and I don't have any, this has not been yet remixed in the ongoing series of remixes by Giles Martin. The full album has not been remixed, so this is my sole representation of Magical Mystery Tour, and it was very nice to have that. I enjoyed the packaging of that. Package itself gets a 5 out of 5. Wonderful, must have. I've seen this go for about $100. Personally, I think that's too much money to pay for it. But if you can find it between 60 and 80 bucks, then I would say go for it. Hopefully you can find it for even less than that. I believe when I first bought it, I probably paid a pretty penny for it. I probably paid at least $100 because it had already been used and on the market for a while by that point. This was a used copy and it was still very collectible, so this one is not as easy to find as the Help box set, but if you can find it, it is absolutely worth having. Just a beautiful little set right here. Things get even more psychedelic in 1968 with Yellow Submarine, a film which the Beatles themselves had very little to do with other than providing 4 new previously unreleased tracks, which were All Together Now, Hey Bulldog, It's Only a Northern Song, and It's All Too Much. Other than that, they don't provide their own voices in this movie. They appear at the very end of it, and their music is featured throughout, but this really is something quite different, and it's a film that I very, very, very much enjoy. The packaging is nice because you get a nice slipcase, a cool booklet with an intro by John Lasseter of Pixar. Some controversy around him in recent years, but generally speaking, he's a man I have tons and tons of respect for as a filmmaker. So to hear his opinions was very interesting. You get that, and you get these cool little cells of John, Paul, George, and Ringo, actual film cells with the colors looking like they were painted on as it would have been. So that was very cool. Nice little package that. The film itself I really, really adore. I think it's just a wonderful psychedelic trip. It's actually very moving at the end when they are singing All You Need Is Love and restoring peace and music to Pepperland. It's cute, and there's some cool extra features as well. There's some interviews with people that were involved. There are some storyboard sequences, some photos and line drawings, the trailer, a documentary or a featurette rather released in '68 promoting the film, and a commentary track by John Coates. And at the very end of the commentary track, there's some contributions from Heinz Edelman, who contributed to the design of the film. Was primarily responsible for the design of the film, in fact. I really enjoyed the commentary. It was cool to hear the perspective of someone that was actually involved. So even though the Beatles themselves had very little involvement in this, this is really a groundbreaking animated feature. I really like animation. I wouldn't say I'm an animation buff, but I do like animated films, and this is a fantastic animated film. The commentary track, John Coates said, they were really trying to make it clear that this is not just a Disney thing. It's not just meant for kids. This is meant for people of all ages. I'm 26 years old, and I can still thoroughly enjoy this movie. I think it's very entertaining. The voices are actually pretty accurate, I would say. They're good caricatures of John, Paul, George, and Ringo, with the exception of George. The person who voiced George does not sound like George at all. Not even remotely. No resemblance to the real George Harrison whatsoever. But the other 3 are at least reasonable and somewhat accurate. Cute film. Really fun to watch. Yellow Submarine gets 5 out of 5. And the package itself 5 out of 5 because it's still available. Very reasonable price. Wonderful transfer of the film. I really liked that audio commentary. And the film cells are cool. Not essential, not important, but cool, nice to have. Very, very a fun animated film, and if you've never seen it, it's a good family feature, and still a good feature for indulging in substances, if you know what I mean. Not that I'm encouraging that. I certainly didn't do that as I watched it, but it lends itself to that very Alice in Wonderland kind of vibe, if you know what I'm saying. And then lastly, we have the Get Back documentary. I never had a Disney Plus account and was bummed that this was only available on Disney Plus, but thankfully I had a coworker who loaned me his login credentials so that I could watch this the weekend that it came out. I was absolutely stunned by it the very first time I saw it, and then I waited another 1.5 years for it to come out on Blu-ray. So when it finally did, I was more than pleased. This Blu-ray package is really nice. It has a really beautiful slipcase. The card that was on the back I kept because it has some nice documentation of what's in the actual set. Inside the set, we get some packaging that is unlike anything I've ever seen before. We get a trifold book-style volume In this left-hand pocket, we get postcards of the 4 Beatles, one for each of them. So those are nice, not essential, but it does make it feel collectible, like a collector's object. You get an advert for the deluxe edition of Let It Be, as well as the Get Back book, both of which we'll be discussing later in this series. And perhaps the strangest packaging choice I've ever seen is the way this book opens. It's like a thick cardstock book with the 3 Blu-rays contained in it. And the front cover of the book is not part of the actual front cover of the box set. So that was strange, but I really like it. It's a nice package. I believe I paid about 50 bucks for this the weekend it was first released. The documentary itself, well, depending on exactly what it is you're looking for, you may or may not find this fascinating. When I first saw it, I really didn't know what to expect. I thought this would just be an updated version of Let It Be and would focus a lot on some of the negative aspects of that period in the band's history. The context is they gathered in January '69, first at Twickenham Film Studios, to film a live TV special of them recording a new album live without overdubs. The plan fell apart. George quits the band. Eventually they relocate to Apple Studios in the basement where they rehearse the rest of the songs. The mood really improves when Billy Preston appears to play keyboards. Very fascinating. And the final episode focuses on the rooftop performance on January 30th. So it includes the entire unedited performance. All in all, the documentary is just over 7.5 hours, split across 3 parts. This was edited together from the original footage shot by Michael Lindsay Hogg for the documentary that over a year after it was recorded became Let It Be, but it's all been re-edited and resynchronized with the original dialogue tapes by Peter Jackson's team at Wingnut Films. It's very typical of Peter Jackson to expand things that could be contained within a single film to films that are very, very, very long. That just seems to be Peter Jackson's style, is to take something that is honestly quite a simple concept and expand it to perhaps indulgent lengths ad nauseum. But in this case, he gets a pass for it because it's not his legacy that he's tampering with here. It's the Beatles' legacy. And by expanding it into the 7.5-hour documentary, he provides what I think must be a very accurate portrait of what it would have been like to be in those sessions with the Beatles that started off very tense, but eventually the mood improved and they became very, very well rehearsed well enough to go perform the rooftop concert, which was of course interrupted by the police. If you want a definitive history of the period and want a lot of commentary from the Beatles, there's certainly a lot of discussion, but there's no after-the-fact commentary by the Beatles or by any filmmakers. In fact, there's no commentary at all whatsoever. There are some text frames where if something that's not clear in the documentary, it's made clear with some text on the screen. But other than that, there's no voiceovers, no additional 2 cents from anybody that was not there featured in this film. There's lots of discussion between the Beatles, but a good 80% of this 7.5 hours is the Beatles rehearsing. There's not so much arguing, there's a fair amount of talking, especially in regards to what they expected the payoff of the concert to be, but most of the film is just them rehearsing. So if you're looking for a documentary that's purely there to entertain you, I would not say Get Back serves that function. However, if you're like me and you were hoping to get a peek behind the curtain to the Beatles' working process, well, that is exactly what it provides. And for that reason, I am enthralled with it. I absolutely loved it. It was very, very hard to watch in one sitting. This is probably only the 4th time I've seen the documentary all the way through, watching it as part of this deep dive. I always picked up something new from watching it, and it was really, really fascinating. So, I loved it. I think it's great. And if you are a fan of seeing a band's work in progress, and also do want some context of what the Beatles were going through, then it's a phenomenal film, and it is absolutely worth watching. It's fascinating to see the other people involved, like Glyn Johns, George Martin, the director, Michael Lindsay Hogg, as well as girlfriends and wives at the time, appear briefly in different places. Although what's interesting that I think is worth stating is that Yoko Ono is there in every single scene. She's at John's side or in the room the entire time. She's never not there when John is there. But she says very little. The only time that she gets on my nerves, and really it's Peter Jackson that gets on my nerves, is including the scenes of them jamming and her just screaming like a dog that has been castrated. It is absolutely awful. I am not going to share any opinions of Yoko Ono as a person, though I have some, and I'm sure everybody else that's watching this has some, and I am not trying to start a riot here or upset anybody, but when she sings, and she's not singing, she's screaming, it has got to be some of the most annoying stuff ever, particularly in the presence of musicians of the quality of the Beatles. I really wish those scenes had not been included. There's only a couple of them. They only last a couple minutes, but they are enough to irritate me to the point where I would almost take a star off. But I'm not going to, because the rest of it is so good, and seeing the entire unedited rooftop concert is absolutely wonderful. It actually made me very emotional seeing that rooftop concert. I thought it was just phenomenal. It made me very emotional to see that and just think that it was their last performance, and all the strife that led up to it, the annoyance, them yelling at each other, getting on each other's nerves, playing the same songs over and over again, making little adjustments here and there, to see it finally pay off, them go on the roof and kick ass, is just wonderful. That performance alone makes the documentary worth owning, or at least seeing on streaming if it's still available on Disney Plus. If you don't want to sit through the whole 7.5 hours, then you should skip to the part of episode 3 where they're playing on the roof, and that is absolutely must-see footage for anyone who's a Beatles fan. Wonderful footage, but the whole documentary was also fascinating as well, to get a glimpse into their working process, and you definitely do see the cracks in the facade of the entity that is the Beatles. But the fact that they're able to pull it together and still play well together, particularly when they get Billy Preston added in on keyboards, is phenomenal. As a musician, as someone who loves seeing how a band like the Beatles works, it was fascinating. If you're not interested in that, you may be better off just watching the concert and not the rest of the documentary, but it still comes highly recommended from me, except for the scenes with Yoko screaming. If we can ignore those, and I can, the rest of it is absolutely outstanding and worth seeing. I've never seen the original Let It Be movie. I don't own it, a physical copy of it anywhere. As far as I know, it's never been released on any digital format, streaming, DVD, or otherwise, so I'd have to go seek out a VHS or something, which I think I tried to do and saw that they go for aftermarket Beatles collector's prices, so not friendly prices, and I know the Beatles themselves expressed frustration. Well, Paul and Ringo expressed frustration that Michael Lindsay's Hogs original documentary, as it came out in 1970, paints a much uglier picture of what the band's, of the disagreements within the band than this documentary does. This documentary is more comprehensive, but it certainly has its moments where you can feel the tension emanating from the screen. So that's my thoughts on the Get Back documentary. It does have an Atmos soundtrack, but I must say, the Atmos adds very little. In fact, at one point I was listening to the Atmos speakers. I stuck my ear right up next to the height speakers, and nothing was coming out of them. So I don't know if they add any ambience or not, because most of the tapes of them talking and rehearsing are in mono, because they were recorded to not the 8-track tape machines. Even the stuff that was recorded to the 8-track tape machines, only the stuff that's properly mixed, either because it appeared on Let It Be or a later compilation, or is from them performing on the roof, does the 5.1 environment actually add anything to it. Other than that, like 90% of the documentary is in mono, so I don't know how necessary a Dolby Atmos soundtrack was, but just thought I would mention that. Pretty much everything here has 5.1 soundtracks. A Hard Day's Night and Help, they're still using the original tapes for the most part, so Help has a little bit more liberty when it comes to 5.1, but it doesn't necessarily sound like a proper 5.1 mix. It's more just like big stereo with added ambience in the rear speakers. Yellow Submarine has more of a proper 5.1 mix. Some of these tracks are spread out quite a bit around the room, and the effects of the 3D animation sound really nice in 5.1 as well. Magical Mystery Tour, mostly just big stereo, doesn't particularly add anything. The 5.1 mixes on 1 Plus of the songs that were using the original tapes where Giles Martin could go back to the original mixes sound wonderful, and as I said earlier, the later tracks, they sound particularly expansive in 5.1 and actually do add something. They sound like proper 5.1 mix. But some of it is just enhanced stereo or enhanced mono. Just thought I would mention that, but overall, all of the 6 packages that I reviewed, I really liked. If I were to rank them in terms of what is most essential to a Beatles fan and gives you the best value for money, well, number 1 is going to be 1. This thing is essential. This is absolutely a wonderful package. You must buy this. Second place would be the Get Back documentary, just because there is so much footage here, and 7.5 hours. It really is just a fascinating peek of them at work. The Magical Mystery Tour package, love that that EP is there. The Help package, love that the script is there, though you don't get much visual material. The Yellow Submarine Blu-ray, I just wish that there was some more stuff, behind the scenes documentaries about the making of the animated feature. I love watching stuff like on Pixar DVDs as I watched as a kid. I just loved the extra features where you could see the thing evolve from storyboard to pencil sketch to the inking and etc. I would have liked to see more of that, but unfortunately that's not there. And of course, again, no commentary from the Beatles themselves. And then this one, I just would like to pick this up on Blu-ray. And as I said, some of the extra interviews, they do go on a bit. So if you're interested in hearing what the Beatles have to say, then this is not a very worthwhile package because they don't have anything to say at all. There's no additional content from the Beatles whatsoever. All right. Now that we've gone through this, we've basically covered everything that was officially released during the Beatles' career, as well as some things from afterward on the 1 Plus compilation. Obviously, the extra features, the commentaries, and the full edit of what became Get Back would not have been released during their career. But all of the films we've covered, all of the promos that were released during their films we've covered, and of course in the previous segments, all of the albums and singles. So at this point, we've gone through everything that was created during the 8 years that the Beatles were together. Now we're going to start moving into the archival stuff. So the actual pulling things out that were recorded but never released. So the BBC recordings, the anthology things, the alternate takes, the super deluxe sets, which have the new remixes of 5 of the albums, as well as a bunch of session material. So now we're going into the Beatles archive and looking at things that have been released after the fact. Of course, Get Back is effectively an archival documentary, but it contains a lot of the same footage and covers the same period that would have been in the Let It Be film. So less so than where we're going now. But we've finished the official Beatles catalog of films, promos, and albums from their career as a band. All right. That was a lot of talking on my part to discuss what I think of these packages, what I think of the films themselves. If I were to rate the films themselves, of the 5, my favorite would be Yellow Submarine, followed by Get Back and A Hard Day's Night, and then Help and Magical Mystery Tour. I'm less fond of those ones, but they're still great fun. Of course, they're great films. If it's not clear by this point, I like pretty much everything the Beatles have ever done. I have songs that I don't like as much, I have videos that I don't like as much, etc., etc., but of course, within the context of their career, it's fun to go through all of this and just see their evolution from mop top teen boys that everyone thought was a fad to one of the most psychedelic, out there, groundbreaking groups in the world, and then just bringing it all back to their roots in their final year as a band. Fun to watch. All right, please leave some comments. I have been getting a fair amount of views on these videos, but I would like to see some engagement. My goal with these videos is not popularity, it's to get some thoughts and feedback from people. What do they think of these releases? What do they think of the Beatles in general? What do they think of my review? Is there anything that I'm missing? Is there stuff that I haven't covered that you think that I should cover? What is your favorite song, favorite movie, favorite video? I want to have those conversations with people. So I'm really hoping to see some more engagement going forward. With that said, like and subscribe, etc., etc. All right. Have a lovely rest of your week. I'll be back in a week from now to discuss BBC recordings and hopefully the anthology CDs and documentary as well. Bye.